take like 45 minutes.
No,
The
no,
whole time.
We'll have they can talk as long as they want.
Tell Sandy that.
Oh yeah, for sure. We need to pop what?
Got two more.
I'll talk forever.
Yes, you wait. You meet God. I'm sure a lot of people stay behind Ethan than he is.
Turn it on.
Dum-dums. Smarties and dum-dums. Smarties and dum-dums.
I know. Oh. Amy's got Okay, we can get started here. It's probably going to be very informal. I have a whole bunch of people who said they would talk in church, but then we figured we couldn't take up all of our church service. So that's why we're going to say some more here and give a couple more people an opportunity to share about their experience. If you have questions, just raise your hand and you can ask them, and we'll answer them as best as we can. If you want to, like, a picture explain that you've seen in the slideshow this morning or what we'll show now, just let us know, and we have plenty of stories to share and plenty of different things. So if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask them. Brooke, you're up.
So one thing that really stuck out to me through this trip was just the nature that we just saw. So like through the week that we were gone, we were in the Andes Mountains to the Amazon rainforest. There are no words to describe the vast beauty of it all. And when we were in the mountains with the communities, the hills were filled with farmland, and each piece of the land was so different. When we were working the first day in the community, we would look out and we were above some of the clouds. The rolling mountains were all around us, and I felt so small. As we moved to the rainforest, I saw the beauty of God's creation, that it didn't stop from there. From the zip lining over the canyons with a waterfall, no words describe how awesome that was. Everything was so green and it looked fake. From the waterfalls we went to, they were beautiful yet powerful and loud. The rainforest didn't let its name down. The rain made everything sparkle as it was dripping wet. The plants in the rainforest were nothing I've ever seen before. So big, unique, and different and beautiful. It's crazy to think that we were in the same country from how different everything looked. God really showed himself through everything, but the vast difference in nature we saw was breathtaking.
So Noelle and I are talking about the time that we had in the community called Pull San Jose. Bless you. So on the, I don't know what side, the right, that's a photo that John took of the community as a whole. And then on the left, it's a selfie from when we were going up to the top. As Megan said, it was about 13,000 feet, which was a lot. And it wasn't hard labor, but it was harder when you're up at the top. Mark asked for about like a dozen people to come from the community to help us out, but then the entire community showed up. So a lot of them were sat on the mountainside while we were all moving the water together. And that was really cool just because it showed that they were like so appreciative of the fact that we were all there and we were helping. And it was nice. I stood next to Rachel for a lot of it, and Rachel was conversing with all of them just because Rachel talks to everybody. And it was really fun to like listen to them and try to understand with like, I haven't taken a Spanish class since like 7th grade. So it was really fun to try and like learn more when you're like dove into the culture. And we all like just connected a ton on that mountain. And then on the way back up was really, really tough because it was, we went over the mountain. We had to walk over the mountain. So going down, it was kind of scary because you thought you were going to just like tumble down the mountain. But when we were going back up, it was about this steep. So we all like took like 7 breaks every like 10 steps. Addison would like sit down and we were all like, thanks, it's gonna be fine. One of the cool things was that Vaughn did really, really well too. Is that like we were all like worried about Vaughn, but then Vaughn's just like Vaughn did better than all of us, you know. All of us teenage girls are huffing and puffing. Like Megan said, we were really dusty when we got back, but especially us 4, because we were all squished in the back of a truck together. And then we were like sat down underneath, and it was just dust blowing at our faces. I think I sat like this for the entire ride, and so that's why I look less dirty than the rest of them. But then after that, then we ate lunch, which was chicken and potatoes in a soup. It was very good, actually, which is surprising because I'm a really picky eater. But the potatoes were really good, and then we played soccer with all the little kids, and that was super fun because we couldn't really communicate. I mean, Heidi and Rachel could, but the rest of us that were there, that were playing soccer with them, couldn't communicate with them. So it was really fun to have a soccer ball, have them recognize it, and then say, hey, we're going to play a game together. And then we all just played a game together, and we laughed together even though we couldn't understand anything. We learned, like, what here was, so we could say, Aki, Aki, whenever we wanted. I was the goalie, so I was, like, running back and forth, and these kids were targeting me, definitely targeting me. And the kids were like really, really good at soccer too, which was really disheartening. And they were obviously used to the elevation. So after we ran around for like 10 seconds, both of us especially were like huffing and puffing, and these kids are running circles around us. But the soccer was so much fun, and it was definitely one of my favorite parts just because we got to connect and communicate with them. Then Heidi read Noah's Ark, and there was this one cute little kid who kept telling her the story before she got to it. So she was reading the story, and then the kid was like, and then it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And Heidi said, you know this story very well. And then she read more, and he spoiled more of the story, and she said, I'm not there yet. Stop. And they did a little craft of bracelets. I don't know if Sarah does. Sarah, put your hand, Brooke. If you have the bracelet on, it's beads that each signify something different. I'm sorry, I can't remember what all of them are. Yeah. Oh, okay.
This is like the only thing I want to say. With the beads, I came up and would start telling them, so we have these beads, and this is all in Spanish. And I, for whatever reason, could not remember the word for black, which is, thank you, buddy. Well, I know it, and so I came up with this, hey, I'll just ask them. So I said, hey, what's this color? And they all said negro. And then I said, oh, what could this mean? And they all looked at me blankly. And so I said, these could mean our sins. And you could just see all of them like, oh, this is that kind of game, okay. And so we went through as a group that our sins, there's a black bead for sins. There's a red bead that signifies Jesus' blood. There's a white bead that signifies our sins are washed away and we're clean and fresh and white, or as white as snow. not just and then there's a blue one which signifies our baptism, and green is for growth and new life, and then yellow is for heaven and the streets of gold. And so we told all the kids the whole thing. They thought this was so cool and so great. And then all their parents started showing up, and their parents wanted bracelets too. And then I told the kids, you have to tell your parents what the colors mean. So all these kids were showing their parents all the colors, and then all the parents were coming to get a bracelet. And so then, we would go through it again with the kids to say, hey, tell your parents, okay, we have a black bead. What does the black bead mean? And the kids would share. And so it turned into a really fun craft that it became an easy way for them to share the gospel with their families, even if, whether they're believers or not, at least they have an easy way of sharing. So,
Okay. Thanks, Mom. It was really cool to see, as the time progressed from our VBS, we started out playing soccer and playing games both days. And that was to get the kids to realize that it's starting. Some kids would go run around and round up kids, but we would play soccer, and then Heidi read the story, or Rachel read the story for both days, and then we would start the craft, and kids would just keep showing up. There were more kids that would show up, and then we would have to get out more crafts, and it was so great. Kids would come up and say, hey, I have a sibling at home, can I have another one? Or would get one for their parents. And that was just really cool to see that it was having an impact on them, and they wanted to share that. And then the bottom picture is when we were that's the community house that we slept in. So that was a very, very cold night. It was very chilly. I had a very thin blanket, and then my dad gave me his airplane blanket, the one that they give you on international flights. And that was all I had, so it was a little bit chilly. But like Megan said, I wouldn't trade that for the world. It was phenomenal, and I would have slept there for 2 more days if we got more time in the community. Then on the right, I only have one photo from that church service, but they had a little message in a mix of Spanish and Quechua, so our Spanish speakers were very confused. And then they had a ladies' choir go up, and that was really cool. One thing that my mom always talks about is that they had these 2 front pieces braided, and then they had the rest of their hair in a ponytail down. And when it was about time to go up, then they all took out their braids so that it was curled. It's just kind of cool that they all curled their hair with the same braids. And then they had the kids go up. And the kids sang a bunch of songs, and one of the songs that they sang was The Lord's Army. And and so all of us were sitting in the audience, and we're like, oh my goodness, we know this song, we know this melody. And we're doing our motions and stuff. And I think my mom was singing in Spanish, and all the kids that were sitting, were around her, were all like, whoa, she knows the song. And then we had been told previously by Mark that they would probably ask us to sing. So we prepared My Friends May You Grow in Grace, and then Jesus Loves Me. Okay, yes. And that was what we were going to sing. But then when we heard that they sang The Lord's Army, then we said, well, I guess we have to sing that. So we sang My Friends May You Grow in Grace and The Lord's Army, because we were like, we know this song too. And they thought that was the coolest thing ever. And then the director of Cody and Say, Ephraim, was sitting in a chair, and he went like this. and they were all shouting Mas, Mas, Mas. So we sang Jesus Loves Me, and then we sang Living for Jesus, and then we sang the doxology, and we said that's the last one because you can't sing anything after the doxology. So we sang a total of 5 songs. And that was really cool. It was just a cool experience. Like many others have stressed, it was what you would imagine heaven, where it's all these different languages, but you're all praising one God, and it's all together, and it's just so cool. Just such a cool experience.
So the second day in Pulse San Jose, we went to work again, but we went at a little lower elevation because not everybody was doing great after the first day. So some people passed rocks to clean out the system, and then other people went to the bottom of the mountain, or farther down the mountain, and we dug out around cement spring protection thing, and that'll help like keep the dirt out of their systems and things like that. And then we played soccer again with the kids. It's just so much. It was so much fun to do different things with them that like you don't need to say it much, but you can still like laugh and have fun with them. And then some people also colored. Most of the girls decided to do that, and they enjoyed like using all the different colors and trying many different coloring pages and things like that. And then for VBS that day, we told the story of how Jesus loves the little children, and all the kids were just gathered around Rachel and listening to the story, super excited about it again. And then we did a craft where they made tissue paper stained glass crosses. They were all super excited about it, and everyone wanted to make one or more, and more kids kept coming, and they made them for their friends or their family, different things like that. It was just super cool to watch the smiles on their faces and how they were enjoying it. And most of them didn't let go of the crosses after we gave them to them, so they were playing soccer with the crosses in their mouths or hanging on to them, running around. And then after they made the craft and stuff, they got some fruit from Mark and the other missionaries there who got it for them. And then before we left, they wanted to teach us some of their games, so they taught us this game called Cat and Mouse. So there was one kid in the middle of the circle who was the mouse, and there was a kid on the outside of the circle who was the cat. You couldn't let the cat get the mouse, so everybody was holding hands trying to keep the cat out. It was just super fun. They were all laughing and smiling, and then they wanted us to try it. We were a bit too big for it, so that didn't go very well. But we also played sharks and minnows and red light, green light, which was really fun because you don't need many words, but you can still play.
And you guys don't understand that, like, these pictures don't do them justice. These kids are so cute. Like, they're absolutely adorable. One of them remembered my name, and I was touched. I was, like, about to cry. And I felt so bad because I forgot his name. But, like, when they were playing the cat and mouse game, then Noelle told me afterwards that a bunch of the kids, like, wanted to hold her hand. Like, they were like, you know, they ran up to her and they were like, hold my hand, hold my hand. And they're like fighting over their hands. When we went into the church service, then Rachel and Heidi both, because they could talk to them, had like 16 kids surrounding each of them. Like they walked in with their like little passe, like it was so funny. Because we had like a specific amount of like seats that we sat in. And we filled up the first row, and then Rachel comes in with all her little children, and they have like two in a seat. Like they're so cute. I can't. I was sitting at lunch with a couple of my friends at school, and I was just looking at some of the pictures that Mark had added, and like Lady has a much better camera than any of us. So some of them, those photos, like they're just so adorable. They're so cute.
On our way back from San Jose, we stopped to go ziplining, which was really fun. So most of us went ziplining, but some people stayed back and took pictures or went on the basket. And the views were just really pretty and cool. And then there was like two ways you could do it. You could either sit down, which most people did on the way there, or if you're really brave and you're Seneca, you went head down. And then on the way back, everybody had to do Superman, and some people got stuck, so that was funny to watch, but...
So we went to a town called Shell, which was actually purchased by the Shell Oil Company in the 40s. They looked for oil there. Somebody said they got within 18 inches of actually hitting oil. I'm not sure how accurate that story is. But the fact is they didn't find any oil that they could really extract, so they got rid of the land. And a fellow named Nate Saint purchased this large tract of land. And I'd never heard of his story before. I'd heard the story of Jim Elliot and the 5 missionaries that were killed in 1956. But before my mom did the children's message a couple weeks ago, I'd never heard of Nate Saint before. But he kind of really established a lot of the operations there. It built a house in 1948. And this is the actual house that he built. It had a second story added on eventually. And then it was completely restored about 20 years ago because wood and jungle don't really mix very well. So it was really touching to be able to understand that story, and see the faith of those missionaries, and see the faith of their one of the wives and sisters who went in after they had been killed and preached the gospel to the Waorani people. And I couldn't resist taking a picture of a cell phone next to the old rotary phone, just the here and the then. One of the buildings that they built was a hospital, and it was meant to. Nate Saint was a pilot, and he'd fly missionaries in, and if somebody was injured, they'd fly them back out. And so they needed a hospital nearby, and so they built a hospital. That has since been torn down and replaced by a new concrete hospital. Lots of concrete there. Fares a lot better in the jungle. But we met the Williams family, Chet and Katie, and then their 3 kids were not there. They're back in the States right now. But they established a mission called SENTA, which I have no idea what it stands for in Spanish. But it's basically an Ecuadorian ministry to the Waorani people who are still, many of them have accepted Jesus, but the modern world is encroaching on them. And they've adopted many things about the modern world, but the road is actually going to get to where they live in a few years. And so one thing Chet and Katie have talked to them about is, hey, the road's going to bring a lot of good things, but the road's going to bring a lot of other things too. So their real ministry is kind of preparing them for that and working through those changes. At the Senta property, they now have a guest house for visiting missionaries. They have the house where Chet and Katie live. They've got another apartment building. And they were doing some work there. They're adding in a water system to collect rainwater, jungle, rainwater. It's going to be overflowing really soon. So a big part of what we did there was preparing some stuff for a group of Calvin engineering students who are going to be down there in a couple weeks, I think maybe even this coming week. Anyway, very shortly, those students will be down there. So we poured some concrete to create a platform for one of the water tanks, and then, pop to the next slide, dug some trenches. And so that's going to be the overflow, because those tanks are going to fill up very quickly. The overflow is actually going to go into a pond, sort of a retention pond where they'll have some fish as well. And I have to say, actually, if you don't mind popping back to the previous slide, that guy running the cement mixer, the guy taking the cement is Matt with the wheelbarrow, but the guy running the cement mixer is Chet. And one thing that was obvious that a lot of the guys we worked with were not afraid of getting their hands dirty. So Chet was out there getting the work done, sweating. Mark was the same way. Chris and Lady were 2 other engineers that work with Codiense, just out there getting dirty, not afraid to roll up their sleeves and get some work done.
Okay, so the next day we went to a church service, which I think for a lot of us, just talking from people who didn't speak Spanish, I think we were kind of nervous, not sure what to expect. We were told it could be 2 to 3 hours. And in a language you don't understand, that could be a long time to sit in church. But I think we all agreed afterwards that it was a very powerful service. So we started, the picture in the top left was walking down to the church. It was probably quarter mile, half mile walk. So that was just really pretty to see the rainforest and the area around it. And then the picture in the middle, we got to witness a baptism, which was amazing. So that was the first thing we did in the morning. The picture in the top right corner, we stood on that bridge to watch it. And apparently not everyone heard this, so this might be a surprise to some of the people who went on the trip. But Chat was telling me and Amy, I think, that so Caesar, the man in the middle, was the one who was baptized. And the day before, he had made our lunch after we had worked all morning at the guest house. And then the man on the right owned the restaurant who made our food. So that was just kind of cool, like his connection with Senta and getting to witness him either recommit or commit for the first time to living a life of serving Jesus. Yeah, and then the next slide. So on the left was just a picture. There was a lot of like open mic time where people could just come up and share what God had put on their heart. So we would sing a couple songs. Oh, I forgot to mention, when at the baptism, we sang He decidido seguir a Cristo, which is I have decided to follow Jesus, which is super, for me, very emotional just seeing it play out. And then, so then in between the open mic times, there was songs that we would sing, and then we came back in and sang I have decided to follow Jesus in Spanish, Quechua, Guarani, and English. So on the side, I think that's Guarani. They just had it up, and it was just so cool to sing in different languages. And I got kind of choked up a couple times because that's what heaven's gonna look like. Like Pastor Brady said in the call to worship this morning, like people from every people group are gonna be surrounded around the throne. And so that was just kind of really, really cool to see just a glimpse of what heaven's gonna look like. And then the next slide, those are just some pictures. The vertical one was us walking to church in the morning again. The top one in the left, just kind of us fellowshipping with some other missionaries after the service. Something I really liked about it was during the service, they gave us like 5 minutes to walk around and just get to talk to other people, kind of like our greeting, but it was like 5 minutes and like everyone moved around the whole building. So a couple of us girls just went around and even just saying like buenos dias, like good morning, how are you, like a simple thing, like that was just so cool to be able to interact with other believers and shake their hands before we started worshiping together. And then the picture in the bottom was us with Mark. I don't think any of the other missionaries are in that picture, but just in the church. And then the message, I thought it was kind of funny. The message was on like children and parents and their relationship and like obeying your parents. And then that was Pastor Brady's message this morning too. So I don't know if God's trying to tell us something or not, but I think there's one more slide. Yeah, so this is where we had lunch after that. The picture with the landscape view, that was our view, and there wasn't windows or anything, so you were just looking right out into the rainforest, which is hard to focus on your food when you're looking at that. And there's some pictures of us afterwards, and that was just a really special meal. Some of us, there was kind of two different tables, so some of us got to sit by Chet and Katie and learn more about the Waorani people and just context for like their history and the way that they were perceived by the world. And I think that was very valuable for a lot of us to learn. And then I got to hang out by Mark, Chris, his son Ethan, Lady, and our bus driver Jorge. And during the whole week, it was hard to like encourage yourself to eat a lot of food because it was all new and like you'd get full really quickly. But that was the first full meal I ate, and I was like, it's because I sat by you guys. Like, you guys encouraged me to eat more. So, yeah, that was one of my favorite days. Just getting to worship together in different languages, and yeah.
So after lunch, we all wanted to go back to the guest house and take naps, but we decided to go for a hike and visit a waterfall instead. So there's some pictures of the waterfall, and there was about a 30-minute hike till we got there, but then we got to go swimming, and yeah, there's not really much to say about it.
Does anyone else from our group want to say anything? Otherwise, we have a little bit of time for questions. Oh, Jonathan does. There you go, Jonathan.
I just want to say something, but I don't know what. Well,
What was your favorite? Tell him, yeah. What was your favorite part of the trip?
Oh yeah, no one talked about that. Hello. Tell them about the animals.
We went to a place where there was animals who were hurt, and my favorite animal there was a caiman that had a screw in its eye. It was very sad. And there were some monkeys, toucans, turtles. Did I say monkeys? Ants.
He's not listening.
And there were also some turtles that were just hanging out on a log, just like, I love it here. And then there was a caiman swimming after those turtles.
Yep. Who'd you sit next to on the bus all the time? Who'd you get to talk to in the front?
Ben.
No, after that. Who'd you speak Spanish with?
Jorge.
Jorge. Yep.
Jonathan sat in the very front seat next to the driver who only spoke Spanish, and so he got to use his Spanish, and he got put to work wiping the windshield off when it got... So there's Jonathan sitting on the front of the thing, just... Big jobs, right? Anything else? Did you enjoy speaking Spanish?
Sort of. I was nervous, but it was fun once I got to do it.
You did a really good job. Anything else?
I'm trying to think of more animals that we saw.
I think that's good.
Oh yeah, the Amazonian deer, foxes, some froggies and fish. Yeah, there were 2 ocelots.
Seals?
Wait, there were seals?
Right? That's what those were?
What?
The seals? Wait, what are they called? They were in the water.
The otter?
And there was also these fish that were huge. And an electric eel.
It wasn't electric, buddy.
Yes, it was. It was electric.
Okay.
Cause I saw it like charging up, and then like fish got close to it, and then they just started swimming away because of the electric.
Okay. You would know. All right, why don't you give it back to Megan?
Thank you, Jonathan. Does anyone have any questions for us about Sandy? Yeah, it was culturally, Mark just kind of told us to make sure we wear dresses for church, especially throughout the week in the mountains. We all wore jeans and stuff like that while we were working. And then when we were in Shell, it was more of a touristy section, so we could wear shorts and everything. But for church on Sunday, we all wore dresses. Yeah, Sarah's going to say something.
Okay, I'm going to speak on one topic real quick that I totally forgot to add in, but I just wanted to say that with my group, a lot of the people I didn't really know well. Like, I saw them at church, and I just wasn't really close with them. But through this trip, there was a lot of fellowship time and a lot of time for us to just get to know each other, especially, like, while working in the mountains. Like, we're not just going to sit there passing buckets of water and rocks and just think to ourselves. Like, we're going to talk to each other. And just through that fellowship, I've definitely got to develop a lot more relationship with these people. And also, like, just getting to learn who they are. And just, yeah, it was a really cool experience. And just my Spanish knowledge is very minimal. I can say hello and goodbye, and that's about it. But through this trip, I also learned that, like, language doesn't have to be a barrier if you make it. Like, you can still try to enjoy the people that you're with and want to be around these people and create just a wonderful experience. So,
Christian, what's your question? We saw an eel at the animals reserve. He is right about that. Katie? I don't know, Brooke. Do you know your flowers? I do not. Nope. I just think they're pretty. Like my animal knowledge that we just talked about, my flower knowledge is also not there. Yes. Oh boy. Sure.
One thing I took away from it was, you support missionaries and, you don't know exactly what they do. And I think it was really good to see what Mark's doing there. And as far as, yes, he's spreading helping spread the gospel and so on, but in a very physical way as far as helping with these water systems and so on. So that was very interesting to see that. And as far as, sharing the gospel is not necessarily talking to everyone you meet about it. It's about doing works, not works, that sounds bad. It's about, you know what I mean, as far as you're showing God's love, living it out. And it was just, the community's involved with that. The church is involved and there's sponsorships outside, so everybody's kind of engaged in it. So that was my takeaway.
I think for me, I was sitting on the plane on our way home, and I was just journaling a little bit about like the trip and what I saw and what we did and everything. And being the one that planned the trip, I got to see it come fully in view, and that was really cool. But I was sitting there thinking about it, and I just had the fruits of the Spirit going through my head, just seeing how God taught you to choose joy, just different patience on Flexidor time, as they called it, because timing was not always super on it. But like just to be able to see God in creation, like Brooke was talking about, the creation was so beautiful, so different in every place we were at. And just to be in community with the people that we were with too, like Sarah was talking about, like all of these people, they mean the world to me now. And I have a so much greater understanding of who they are. We had so much fun together. We laughed and we joked, we did everything, but God was good in that, in providing us relationships. Heidi's got something.
I think God really showed me two things during the trip. One, Jonathan kind of mentioned the ants that we saw at the animal reserve, but like this was so cool because the song like the ants go marching 2 by 2, like we saw that. They were carrying little pieces of leaves, and this was like 24, 36 hours after we had seen those beautiful mountains. So just talking at devotions that night, that the supremacy of God over creation, like he created those huge mountains that 13,005 feet of elevation, like knocked it out of us, but like also the ants and like just watching them work, that was just a really cool way to see God's supremacy. And then also the last night we talked about, Pastor Brady at devotions kind of asked the question, like, are you being a servant of the gospel or is the gospel serving you? And that just like really hit like, what do we have to sacrifice? Because like we sing in My Friends May You Grow in Grace, like it's for God's glory, it's not for ours. So that just kind of hit like, in the end, it's not about us or what we can do, but it's about how God can use us to further his kingdom.
And I think it was said earlier too, but there was like a little taste of heaven too, like when we were sitting on the mountainside singing with the people in different languages, like how we're all going to be sitting on in front of God's throne someday, and we're all going to be singing his praises. But even if like we don't all know the same language, we can still praise him together, and it's all the same.
My biggest takeaways were, I talked about this a little bit at our family night Bible study, but my biggest takeaways were pretty much the same as Heidi's, but it was like, I'm a very like anxious person, so I am always like worried about everything, and it was really, really cool to feel those like prayers and have, I was sitting on the plane next to Sarah, and Sarah was like, what if our luggage gets lost? Like, like what happens then? And I like wasn't even worried about it. I just said, other people have clothes. It'll be fine. Like God's got us, And then like just reading about Jesus' supremacy, it really like helped to understand that like it's all gonna be okay. It's gonna turn out like we're under God's control. And then also the doing everything for the glory of God. I never really thought about that until like my dad was talking about it and said that it's so much easier to feel like you're doing everything for the glory of God when you're out there and you're on like a mission trip. You know, you're just full of the Spirit because you're on a mission trip. But coming home, then I realized that I could still do that. Yeah, it's really sad, but I was sitting over my math test that I got a 75 on, but but I was like sitting over it and I didn't understand any of it. And I was like, do everything for the glory of God. Just keep going. But it's just so cool to see how much everybody's grown and to see how that changes. When Heidi and I first saw each other at school, we like grabbed hands and said, "You're a child of God." Things like that.
Alyssa. The elevation, we were warned, but we were not. Yes, as Heidi says, Heidi is probably the most in shape out of all of us, and she was the one that suffered the most. But even Mark didn't know that like 13,000 was going to be our height elevation, and just being there, it was beautiful. It was just hard, like the elevation was. But that and the food, it was a learning experience. The first day was a bit of struggle with a chicken foot in our soup, but you know, we still were not hungry. We were very well fed over the week. Lots of Smarties and Dum-Dums. Well, I want to thank you guys all for coming. Oh, Pastor Brady, you can come up here. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening to our stories and just all your support. I've said it before and I will say it again. We're so glad to be a part of this church family.
Well, you stay here. Where are you going? So the way I saw God work on this trip in multiple ways, right? But we had a lot of younger kids on this, not a lot, but we had some younger girls on this trip, right? And the way that God worked in their hearts and molded their hearts was very evident in the way throughout the week we've seen it, but in the way that I think almost all of them said, I don't want to leave. So we did bring them back with us, but in all seriousness, right? That's a work of God in their hearts and in their lives, and that's one of the reasons why we went. And Megan, when we started planning for this trip, you were 17? Yep, and now you're 18. But anyway, the point is that we're grateful for Megan because she planned this trip. All the details, all the organization, everything. So this is another testament, kids. You don't have to be 30-something in order to plan a mission trip, right? You might need your dad's wallet, as Megan did, but other than that, right? And so again, this is a testament to God's work, right? He is working, especially in our young people here at Noordeloos. We've said it before, and that's such a blessing, and we just give all thanks to God for that. So can we give Megan a hand? No.
I think the Sunday school kids have been released. So thank you guys again for coming. It means a lot. Oh, there's a video.
I have a video. I asked Mark to send us a video. So this is the thank you video from Mark.
Hello, ministry partners at Noordeloos. Mark Dahan here along with Chris Vischer and Lady Marine. I just wanted to say thank you again for coming down to visit. It was a blessing to have you down here to see the work and for you guys to participate in that work in Pool San Jose. It was also a delight just to be able to spend the week with you and to get to know you guys, to worship with you and eat with you. And I'm just so grateful for your flexibility and your willingness to go through the whole schedule. You guys were so full of grace and understanding with the altitude and all the travel and the food. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that as well.
Hey guys, it was great to meet you. It was a wonderful time that we had with you. Thank you for the interest you've taken in the work down here in Ecuador. It was a blessing for me to see the encouragement that you are to Mark as his supporting church, and just the way that you have taken an interest in him and this ministry is great to see. Thank you.
Hola Iglesia, quiero darle las gracias a todos por acompañarnos este tiempo acá en Ecuador. Gracias por invertir su tiempo, sus recursos, por tal vez desacomodarse de sus hábitos, de costumbres, para venir y conocer un poco de lo que estamos haciendo acá en el Ecuador. Gracias por el tiempo que invirtieron y bueno, un abrazo para todos, chao.
Thanks again. It was great to have you guys down here. A blessing to you and your ministry partners around the world. Blessings.
Just a quick translating Lady's part. We worked with Lady. Lady is from Colombia. She is kind of the same job that Mark does, but she's just a separate missionary. And she says, "Good morning, church. I just want to tell you thanks for coming to Ecuador to spend time with us here. Thank you for sharing your gifts, your time, and some of your customs with the people, and for learning a little bit more about what we are doing here in Ecuador. Thank you for all the time you spent with us here. Ciao."